Good evening, and thank you for joining me on another live show. We've got an exciting discussion planned for you tonight, and everything centers around track and field. The World Championships are around the corner, and anticipation is building. I, for one, am brimming with excitement, and I look forward to having a really good conversation about events leading up to the World Championships. And while I won't be doing my preview show today, next week definitely I'll spend some time doing a preview live where we'll go through a number of events and I'll put my credibility on the line, whatever that may be. And yeah, I look forward to having that discussion. But obviously, if you want to talk about that tonight, I'm happy to do that as well. But tonight, we will be spending a little bit of time. I want to start off the live by going through some of the recent rule changes. I'll do that in a second. We'll also explore some notable doping violations and scandals surrounding the sport. I may also touch on a few performances that occurred recently at the Ed Murphy Classic. And so, whatever else you're keen on discussing, I know there's some exciting stuff happening as well, or controversial stuff if you want to think about it that way. The great Athing Mu, Bobby Kersey is saying maybe she won't go to the World Championships. We'll talk about that as well. But don't hesitate to share your thoughts, put your questions, your comments in the chat. And I look forward to a rich interaction with you this evening for the time that we have here. And I look forward to featuring them on the channel. And if you are catching this on the rebroadcast at some point, also share your thoughts as well, because as you know, I make sure I respond to every comment. And so whatever you want to talk about this evening, we'll do it as well. But I'm going to start off with a few things. And let's start off with the rule changes that occurred recently from World Athletics. So thank you for joining me. I see a couple of people on the live already, and I really appreciate you for coming on. And this is your channel, so make sure you engage. All right, so let's kick off by talking about the recent World Championships, World Athletics rule changes that we'll see at Budapest and beyond. All right, so I'll review these things and I'll give you my thoughts on some of them. And I'll probably spend a little time talking about the running on the protest as well, because I'm not quite sure I like that one. And particularly, I think it's a very soft reaction to what's going on in when it comes to Devon Allen. I think it's a response to that, but I'll get to that in a second. All right, so let's get into this. So as you know, starting in Budapest in a couple of weeks, we will have different seeding options when it comes to lane draws, right? So if you're familiar with the sport, the old rules, if you were on the straight, top ranked athletes would have been in lanes 3, 4, 5, and 6. The next rank would be 7, 8, and the last ranked athletes would be in lanes 1 and 2. Beginning at this World Championships, what you will see is top ranked athletes in 3, 4, 5, or 6. The next ranked athletes are going to be in 2 and 7. And if you are the last ranked athletes, you'll be in 1 and 8. And I have a diagram for that. If my producer can move forward to that slide, you can see some of that. It may not be as clear as this, but it's on the World Athletics website. If you're in the 200 meters, what will happen is that the top ranked athletes will get either 5, 6, or 7. The next ranked athletes will get 3, 4, and 8. And if you're a last ranked athlete, you get 1 and 2. And in 400 meters, it's 4, 5, and 6 for the top ranked athletes, 3 and 8 for next ranked, and 1 and 2 if you're the last ranked athletes. So I think this is something that's interesting, and particularly what we're seeing happening here is instead of just giving the last ranked athletes lanes 1 and 2 like we previously used to do, now you're going to get 1 and 8. So you get on the both ends there. You get 1 and 2 if it's around the curve. So that's in 200 meters and 400 meters. And so I think those are interesting rule changes. I think those things come out of a conversation with the coaches and athletes about what's the optimal thing in track and field and people trying to get an advantage, or what's the, we'll see. So that's interesting there. The thing that I'm also kind of pleased about is the elimination of that qualifying times for middle distance events. So if you're going to run the 1500 meters and above, you no longer have to sweat if you are waiting to see if you're one of the last qualified persons, right? Based on timing, they'll no longer have those for this World Championships, because previously, if you were in the 1500 meters, you'd run 4 heats, 5 qualify automatically, and then 4 after, and you get 24 advance into the next round. This time it's just going to be 4 heats, and the top 6 will go through. And likewise for 3000 meter steeplechase, it would be, they'll set it up that way, and they'll do it with the semifinals. So there's no qualifications that's going to come on a small queue when it comes for timing. And I think that's kind of reasonable, I believe, when it comes to middle distance running. We'll see what happens. I don't know if it will change the sport much, but that's what we'll have there. And then we're going to talk about something I think All in the Game hit us with bright and early on the channel here, and the long overdue athlete replacement. I'm going to talk about that for sure. I think that is I think it's well overdue. A lot of people have been talking about this for a long time. So what that really means is that World Championships, at the World Championships, you will not have any empty lanes when it comes to semifinals and finals. And they're going to institute something that they're calling a virtual hot seat system. And so this is for every event, relays, individuals, field events as well. So in most cases, they'll keep, if it's an 8-lane event, say the 100 meters, they'll keep 9 and people finishing 9 and 10th, based on ranking. If you think about the semifinals, they will be in a somewhat of a call room structure where they have to go through the warm-up process as well, and they have to be there. And just in case during the warm-up procedures, an athlete that earned their spot in the final or a semifinal, they succumb to some form of injury, then you can be replaced. And so I think that will allow for, and I think they're going to have a maximum of 2 athletes that will be considered for each replacement. So I think that's fun for the sport, because what we've seen in the past, like let's think about what happened at World Championships last year. Hansa Parchment, he got injured in the warm-up, and so there's an empty lane there, right? And that's not good for, I don't think that's good for fans. That's certainly not good for TV spectacle as well. So I think that's a good move, and I look forward to seeing that as it, I think we'll see it on the Diamond League hopefully, and everywhere else as well. And that's sensible policy right there, right? Yeah. Let me just get a couple comments here. Thank you everybody for joining. Let's see what All in the Game is saying here. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the Q room in a second as well. What you're saying here, some people don't get that it doesn't apply to false starts, which are right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, you have to be like hurt or something like that in order to be replaced. Right. All right, and then World Athletics have now introduced the Q room, which is really interesting to say. And so this is a new system that they'll be implementing at the World Championships this year. I hope we get a chance to see this room. I suspect they'll show us because they'll unveil it in some capacity. So I hope the international broadcasters will let us get a sneak peek at what's happening there. And so this is for all the sprint events, hurdles, flat sprints, and 800 meters. And this is a room where if you're a non-automatic qualifier, you can go after your race and watch the competition. And so there will be, as World Athletics are saying, and you see this is a diagram on the screen that gives an indication of what the room would look like. It's going to be a place with big chairs that's comfy. You can relax there. They'll also provide some level of mats and equipment that you can use to cool down and stretch and so on. And then there'll be screens that you'll have access to your coach. You'll have access to your kit that you would have left in the call room, and light refreshments and so on, as they're saying. And that will allow you place to cool down and watch to see if you actually qualify if you're not one of the automatic qualifiers. So it's a really cool kind of setup that I think that's important to have at the World Championships. I suppose athletes will find this very nice as we move forward. But I'm sure they'll give us a sneak peek in it. I remember in previous championships, they often sometimes give you a sense of what's happening in the warm-up area, in the call room. So I don't see any real reason why they won't watch an athlete sweat while they wonder if they qualify for a semifinal or final. Thank you so much for saying that, Sandra. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on the live this evening. And yeah, you know, and we'll see what happens. Yeah. All right. Now, I want to talk about what I think is an interesting rule. I don't know your thoughts on it. I'm looking forward for you out there to give me your sense on it. So far, all the stuff that World Athletics have been implementing here, I have no problem with. I like the room. I like the idea of replacing no empty lanes. You know, yeah, the Q room will have TV cameras in there. Oh, yeah, thanks so much, All in the Game. The new rule change that I'm still not 100% sure of, and I think this is something that is a cop-out, and maybe I'm interpreting it wrong. So if you don't agree with my analysis on this, let me know. And so running under protest. So that's something that World Athletics has also addressed for this upcoming World Championships. So, and I'm just going to read it just for sake of me not making any mistakes. So athletes have previously been allowed to run under protest if a start referee had doubts over the validity of a false start charge, but not if the false start was indicated by a World Athletics certified start information system. So, for example, if you remember last year with Devon Allen, and I get to him in an interesting way as well. Look, if you go to the World Championships or the Olympics and it's an Omega equipment, they're not going to allow you to do, they wouldn't necessarily allow you to run under protest because that is the top of the line. They think it's calibrated right. There shouldn't be any issues. Now, here's what they're saying. When the reaction time is close to the allowed limit of 0.1, which is an interesting kind of dynamic, and we can get into that. I have a video on that I talked about last year, but we can go into that. They're saying any movement may hardly be visible, and that's true. So that's when you false start after the gun, basically. It's a reaction time false start. You have that, you can't really see with the naked eye or even with the slow motion camera really that an athlete did any move. So it's the pressure sensor on the block that really does this. And so in World Athletics threshold is that under their system, the study that they've used for a long period of time, they are saying that what we call auditory response times to the gun, no one should be able to start quicker than 0.1. That's what they're saying, or 100 milliseconds. They have a study from 2009 that suggested that some Finnish athletes can start up to at least 0.8. We can stick a pin in that again because I think this is also an interesting dynamic. And so here's what they're saying. In these cases, now in cases like this, when it's super close to the allowable limit of 0.1, if the start referee feels that the start in question requires further study, the referee may allow the athlete to run under protest. I'm calling this the Devon Allen response in a small way. And here's why I say this. So if you remember last year, and thanks for saying that again, All in the Game about Julian Alford, the same thing happened to her. If you remember last year, Allen's time was what? 0.999, right? Something like that. It was ridiculously close to point. It couldn't get any closer. And in my estimation, and I've said this before, I said it in my video, there's no appreciable difference between what Allen did and the allowable time. And especially when we put it in context that World Athletics had a study that they should have probably changed the threshold. They just haven't done it. What they're basically saying now, and I think what will happen here is if an athlete is very close to 0.1, 100 milliseconds, if they're very close to that, say like what happened with Devon Allen, they may allow an athlete to run under protest while they go back and go figure this out, which probably will come back that you're disqualified anyway. I think this is not the real solution here, in my estimation, unless I'm thinking about it incorrectly. I really think the real solution to the reaction time false start is to just go with what they've already uncovered with elite finish athletes. And you remember, those are athletes, and I have always questioned this. They're not the greatest starters in the world that they put in that control trial. And so I imagine that it's possible at this stage that really super elite athletes can train their bodies to go much quicker than this. But at least they're allowing you, well, at least if the starter thinks something goes wrong, you might be able to run under protest. I hardly think you'll see this at the World Championships. You just have to be as probably very close to it the way Devil Allen was, or Julian Alfred or something like that, right? Most of the times when people do reaction false start, it's very fast, like a 0.6 or a 0.7, and then you're far away from the threshold that no one really thinks that there's a need to question whether that something is wrong with the equipment, right? And I'm really still not quite sure about this false start rule. I don't know your thoughts on it, but we'll see what happens. Thanks for joining me, Imran. I know what you're here for. Maybe tomorrow we can talk about that. Appreciate everybody on the channel so far. Thanks so much. Give me a like if you like what we're doing here, and make sure you subscribe and hit notification bell, because that way you know we'll come live. And if you want to talk about some World Championships predictions today in the chat, I'm all for it. Although next week I want to do a show going over a few things, obviously, but I'm definitely all for it. But I appreciate everybody on the live. So those are some interesting things. And let me know your thoughts. Let me finish my thought here. Let me know your thoughts about the running under protest. I just think it's a mechanism for them not to really change the rule, but also allow for something that will, athletes won't start lying down on the pitch, on the track again. Okay. So those are some interesting rule changes, the lane assignment policy when it comes to seeded lanes. They've made some changes there. They've made some changes when it comes to how we deal with qualifying in events from 1,500 meters and above. No longer have to go on time for small queues. Automatic qualification by top 6 makes sense to me. I like the queue room. I think that's a really good feature for athletes to just sit and relax and watch another race complete to see if they make it. And I'm not so sure I really like what happens with the running under protest. There's also been another change, I think, in terms of your ability to carry your own throwing implement. They've lifted the restriction on the throwing thing, and still limit 2 implements per athlete. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. I mean, Imran, you always have me on some of these interesting questions on the Track and Field Live. I actually don't know what the Reggae Girls will do. I'm surprised about how far they've gone. I think they've been doing well. I hope. I think they could, but I don't know enough about it, to be honest with you. I haven't followed them in much detail to feel confident that I can tell you that. I've watched all the games, but I just don't. I don't know the extent that way. All right, so that's it for new rules on track and field and some interesting things going on. All right, I want to pivot and talk about. I'm picking a few things that I saw in the last couple of weeks that, particularly this week as well, that I'm intrigued by and just want to talk about. So I want to stick with something. I want to go to Jamaica for a little bit. I'll go around the world in circles for sure. But I want to go to Jamaica, and I want to talk about something that I've seen a lot of talk about, and we knew this was coming before Jamaica named their World Championship team to Budapest, which looks like a very strong team. The likes of Shericka Jackson, obviously, Fraser Price leading the lot. It's exciting, some young talent there, good stuff on the field events. I'm interested to see what that new shot putter can do. Rajendra, what's his name, Campbell. I'm looking forward to triple jump, all of that kind of stuff. I think we're in an interesting way of an interesting time of a new set of athletes coming in along with some senior athletes that can do something there. So I'm excited about that. But I think the thing that has a lot of people talking, especially in the track and field world, is what ultimately happened rather to the remaining 400-meter spot at the world for Jamaica in the flat 400-meter for men. So as you know, only the top two in Jamaica had the qualification standard. So they had to go all the way down to the person who finished sixth in the final to give them that last automatic spot, because after the July 31st deadline, the guy that finished third didn't make the qualification standard. But all of this is clouded in the context that Rasheen McDonald, who happens to be the national record holder, and until this year, if I'm being honest with you, I really was skeptical of that sub 44 because he was never close to that since that period in time. But now, having run the third fastest time of the year behind Stephen Gardner and what's that kid? I think the African kid, Muzala. I forgot his last name. And he runs that 44.3. It's 44.0. Yeah. And so a lot of people are thinking that given that Jamaica had that open spot, that it's a potential that McDonald could have gotten it, since he's the fastest Jamaican, the third fastest person in the world this year. And he didn't, right? I'm not surprised that he didn't get it, but he didn't get the spot. He's only listed currently to participate in the mixed relays. He's world number 3, but he run on the mixed relays. He's not listed to participate in the 4x4, at least based on the document, that PDF document that came out from the Jamaica Administrative Athletics Association. But we'll see. He could potentially also get on the 4x4. And we'll see what happens there. Now, McDonald couldn't have done what a lot of people were asking for. So he ran, I think, the first round of the Jamaica National Trials. Then he didn't show up for the semifinal. Not quite sure what happened. Maybe he was suffering with something. But he couldn't have gotten what a lot of people are talking about for a medical exemption. He wasn't ranked in the top 3 in the world in order, based on the Jamaica rules, to get one of those. So he was basically operating on what would be largely a discretionary model to get into the World Championship as an individual representative for Jamaica. Had all 3 Jamaican athletes in the final gotten the qualification standard, we wouldn't be talking about this, right? And it's so is the case that you would say to yourself, well, why give the guy, who did they give? Barnes? Is it Barnes? Yeah. Why did he get the spot and not give it to McDonald? Well, I guess he ran in the final, so he deserves a spot, and that's what we'll see. So I don't think there's any. I think what we need to see, though, is better ways in which they use this discretionary model. I mean, I've often never fully understand how Jamaica selects their teams. They have rules, but sometimes it doesn't seem to me that they clearly follow these things. It's not the first controversy around it. I don't know how much of a controversy it is. I think I've seen some articles, I've seen some chatter online, but I don't know if they're really upset that he didn't get the spotlight. I don't know. I've not heard him say anything, and I certainly haven't heard anything out of the camp saying that they should have given him the spot, right? Yeah, I don't know. Let me get to a few comments before I continue on. Let me see what All in the Game is saying here, and maybe I can get my screen a little bit bigger. Why wasn't all 4 spots utilized in the women's 100 meters? That's a very good question. I don't know. yeah. And I don't know. Yeah. Look, I actually don't know if I understand that document. I saw it. It lists. I'm waiting to see if it's just because they didn't do the PDF right. But you have to put 4 people. I just don't see why you wouldn't do it, right? I think that might be just an. I was looking at it. I remember. I know what you're talking about, and you see it on one side. On the other side, it doesn't. I think it's a typo. That's my guess. It can only be a typo because there's enough. There are enough women who have the qualifying standard to allow that to happen, and. As to the last one, I don't know. I actually don't even know about this. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't. I can't explain this. I think this is similar to what this was similar to something last year with the Hudson case too, right? He didn't get a chance because of the what seemingly seemed like a late time for the paperwork. So we don't know. Yeah. And yeah, what else you're saying? Even after running 43, his next two races were 44.8. Yeah. No, I think he's probably one of the most inconsistent runners. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, I gave him a little pass this time, in the sense that to see him run that in a competitive environment, and maybe he went back into a different training cycle. Let's see what he can. Well, we won't know what he can do because he won't be running any individual races at the World Championship. But if he can, I hope he can do a spectacular leg on the mixed 4x4. And if he does a really good leg, then maybe you put him in the 4x4. I just don't see why you wouldn't drop a guy like that in the 4x4 if he's at a 44.3, and if you're assuming that continue to improve, especially the kind of training environment that he's a part of. I think most of his issues sometimes to me seems, I don't know what to say. I can't say that, but inconsistency definitely is the word. Let's see what Sandra has to say here. Ron Watson won the 100 meter is not listed to run on the 4x4. I actually think that is, I think something is wrong with that piece of paper. That just can't make sense to me. I'm sorry I don't have it with me right now, but I was reading it up to a couple nights ago. I was in bed and I was using my finger on the iPad just to draw across to see if the form was filled out correctly, because it makes no sense to me. I think there's there has to be issues there. And granted, I didn't follow any articles after the press conference that they had, except for a piece I saw that when people were asking about the McDonald's situation. But yeah, that makes no sense. And it's not, and as far as I know, and if someone else can correct me, I haven't seen any relay camps happening in Jamaica, right? Or with Jamaican athletes to suggest that there was relay camps and you didn't show up and that's why you're not part of the pool. That's not the United States, right? As far as I know, I'm not seeing that. If that's the case, I'm happy to be corrected on that. But actually, I don't know. So we'll see. I suspect he has to be he has to be in it, right? It just probably is some form of a, how can diplomatically, I think it's just an error in the way they structure that document that they share to the public. That's what I think. All right, so that's what I think with the Rasheen McDonald. I think we'll see him over mixed 4x4. Hopefully, he also gets a chance to run the 4x4, and we'll see what happens. Jamaica should be able to try and get a medal. That's probably very hard, but we'll see. Hopefully, Paulina doesn't run this, and that might change the dynamic of the spot. One more before I move on. They don't have a curve runner in the men's 4x4. Andros would be. Yeah, I suspect. I think you're right on that. I don't know. I just don't know what the plans are for the relay, and I haven't talked to anybody recently. I should reach out to a few people. I suspect they'll just go to the World Championships and try a thing or two. But as we know, if you get in some good practices, it doesn't always mean it will work. There was a period in time where the Americans were going camp after camp and they were like sticking to their camp policy and it wasn't working, and until it worked, right? But I suspect you need athletes to be somewhat familiar with each other. Excuse me. And I still put it to you, I think, had the Jamaican women last year spent a little bit more time in the relay, maybe they would have won. I mean, they certainly looked like they had the quality to break the world record, and it didn't happen. There were some kind of issues with fatigue for particular athletes like Elaine, probably, but yeah, you have to have camps, I think, especially when you don't. I think you need camps regardless of the talent pool. I think when the talent pool is struggling in terms of world class ability, then you certainly need more camps. I think it matters more because the more efficient you are of getting that stick around, then the better chances that you can get a medal. And we've seen lesser nations pick up medals. The Japanese all the time are in the mix here and there. They have great exchanges. We've seen the Italians pick up medals, gold medal at world in in Tokyo. And so I think the Canadians will figure it out as well. You know, you have to practice, I think. So I'll stop uh, lamenting on that. Thanks so much for saying that, Sandra. Appreciate you as well. All right, I will continue, and I want to switch from moving from Jamaica, I suppose, and I will. Let me get all in the game before I move to that because I know I'll forget here. You said some won't like this, but on form, one of Elaine or Brianna shouldn't be in the 4x1 pool. Okay, one who runs second breaking. I agree. I mean, I they're not in exceptional shape. I think they're in the pool, but I don't know if they. I'm not quite sure. I don't know if the thing that I don't know about Elaine's story, and we've talked about this, is if she's recovering sufficiently now that she's doing a level of training that she's much better than she was at the national championship. If that's the case, where she had to fight to get into the championships because of those injuries, and if she's working hard to finish the season properly, where she'll go back on the circuit, probably try to get in the Diamond League final, which will be hard, but you know, who knows if they'll put her in it. They probably won't. But if she can get on a couple of those, then that would suggest that she's building up, and then maybe she might be okay for the relay. But if that's not the case, then I don't know, you know? All right. So that's what I'm thinking about. Now, Erwin, I want to thank you for saying that because that's where I'm about to go. That was my next thing. I was about to go right there. I don't know if I've ever seen you on the channel before, and I want to thank you for joining me this evening. If it's your first time, welcome. If you've been here before, uh, I I'm happy to see that you're commenting, and if you've done it before, I may have missed it. I'm gonna get to that, and that's true too, Sandra. Just to finish that argument, yeah, I don't really know what they'll do. We'll see what happens there. All right, let's talk about arguably one of a generational talent in the likes of Athing Mu. So Athing Mu, she's with Bobby Kersee. So is Sydney McLaughlin. I'll be honest with you. I hardly ever question anything that Bobby Kersee does because, you know, Bobby Kersee has a track record longer than most people in the business. He's been delivering since the 1980s, right? 84, I think, right? It could be before that too, if my memory serves me correctly. This guy is outrageously good in preparing athletes. He's also famous for unconventional methods, if you want to say it, and he sticks to them. So Bobby does interesting stuff. But then we hear this news. So, you know, so most likely, obviously, when he gets Athing Mu or an interesting thing, and I was saying, well, he's going to set her up to try and break the world record, which is a ridiculous world record that should not be on the books, but we can talk about that. It's probably the oldest record in track and field. Still, I think it is. I could be wrong, but it's there for about 40 years or so. That shouldn't be on the books. I don't want to even call a woman's name, but so there's this article that comes out in the LA Times, written by, what's the guy's name? Griefing or Grief or something like that. And he's saying, in which they have Bobby Kersee, and I pulled out a quote here. He says, so this is on Mu, and this is Kersee on Mu, and he's saying, it's in our control if we decide we're just going to go ahead and train through this year and focus on next year. then that's what we're going to do. The training is going well, but our thought process openly is that we're going to just train here in LA for the next 2 weeks, and the next time she gets on the plane, it's either be on vacation or to Budapest. What? When I saw this, I was like, you got to be smoking something. Like, I don't understand it, right? Like, why? I mean, I think this year ran sparingly. She ran super fast over the 1500 meters. She PB, I believe. I have to go look up the times. Oh, speaking of that, thanks all in the game. Right. She's like 14:16 to 4 minutes 16 to 4:03. I mean, like, and then she had that 49:57. So I don't know if this is legit or not, right? And, and I agree with you. It's better be mind games. I just don't understand how Athing would not be fresh and ready to defend her title in Budapest. Whether she wins is a different question, and we can get to that. We can think about what Hutchinson's been doing, and we know Keely ran her really hard last year, really hard. I think Keely made a tactical error last year on the stretch, got boxed in. I don't think she would have won, but it would, you don't know, right? And there's Mora. Who else is there running really fast? I saw Jenna Ricci coming back too. I mean, so you can't tell me that Athing can't go to the World Championships and get a medal. I just don't see it. Now, if you're saying to me that all we want is gold medals, then maybe that's something else. But you cannot convince me that she won't medal. And so for them to be doing this, as you say, it better be mind games. I'm not sure why you'd be dropping that kind of mind games at this time. But I don't know. Let me see what else you have here. I'll get to some of the comments when I'll come back to this. This seems to be an issue specifically with Athing and Sid, as the other athletes like Kenny Harrison and Jennifer Nini have been competing regularly. Yeah, so it's a good question. I don't know good comment rather. I don't know what her pocket looks like. I mean, she was the world record holder at some point. I don't know what kind of her endorsement deals look like. But that Sydney is raking it in for a track and field athlete, and likewise for Athing. And obviously, we know Athing has that kind of side gig as well. She has the ability to model and so on. So I don't think they're strapped for cash. I'm not quite sure why this kind of spear running. I know last season Sydney shut it down early because of the, what seemed like fatigue. But I just don't really know. And then Erwin says something here, and thanks for subscribing. I just saw that comment as well. Sometimes it's not all about winning. Sometimes you have to lose. But she's never lost, though, respectfully. I don't think so, right? Like, she comes on the circuit very young. She has the Olympic title. She has the world title. I think it's fair that she is the benchmark, or because of that, others have to step up. Now, I like the space of the 800 meters. I like Mary. I definitely like Keely. So I think it's in a healthy place. I could see an athlete coming last at the World Championships and running a 56.9. I could see that. A 1:56.9, sorry. I mean, I could see it. I might be, can 8 women do that? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. And so I don't know if she has to lose something, she should, take a loss at the World Championships. The Olympics is next year. For the life of me, unless there's something that when Bobby got, he said her time at Texas A&M, they overworked her and she needed time to build back and we had to change everything and so on. Maybe she's suffering from some things that they're not telling us. But she basically didn't run this year. It was so I really don't see why they're not. I hope this is a joke. I really hope this is a joke because even for the sport itself, I think it has to be a joke because this is like one of the leading athletes. I think one of the athletes that will do so much for the sport, possibly try to get down close to that world record. And I tell you, women in this sport have it the worst. Those world records got to come off the book. And I digress. I don't want to rant on that again. But it's just ridiculous that we still have some of that stuff on the books. And then we're waiting 30, 40 years for athletes to come and try to come close and break them. And I hope we see like the 200 meters go this year. You know, that's probably the softer of the two. Anyway, so I don't know. What do you say here? All in the game. Mary looks much stronger, tactically disciplined. I think so. I think it should be a stellar race. I'm excited to see what would happen there. I'm very much excited to see what would happen. And I hope that Athing finds her way on that plane. And the plane isn't going to a tropical island. And she goes over to Europe and tries to defend her title. Based on what we've seen, that 1500 race, that 400 race, I don't think you can get off the podium. I just don't see it. Now, whether she wins is a different story. But it would be one of the races I think the 800 meter race this year is one of my most anticipated races. So I'm begging you, Bobby, I think, get on that plane. Unless there's something else. Maybe, I don't know if there's a mental fatigue or something happening there. If that's the case, then okay, right? Then sometimes you need time off. And then we have to remember, I don't want to be harsh because as fans, we see these athletes and we think they're machines, and they're certainly not machines. And she's very young still, making her way in the sport. And if she's going to have a long time in it, if she doesn't want to do it, if she's not having fun, then don't do it either. So, but we'll see. All right. So that's one athlete that might be missing because of some coaching stuff, and they'll figure out what's going on there. Another athlete that potentially could miss the World Championships, and I really hope it doesn't come to this, but I would certainly understand if that happens, is Nafi Thiam. Nafi, two-time Olympic champion, world champion, defending world champion in the heptathlon as well, is struggling. She has that known problem with tendonitis in the Achilles, and so she had to withdraw from a couple of Diamond League events this year. She withdrew from the Belgium National Championships, and at 28, I think she's probably thinking about what will happen next year in Paris. Right, that would round her off. I don't know if that would make her the greatest ever, but we'll see. And so our coach, Van der Plessen, he's saying that they'll see what happens and see how the tendon reacts to some rest, but she might not be there at the World Championships. And she was in great form this year because she broke the world record indoor this year, right? Did she? Yeah, I believe she broke the world record this year. And so I just hope that she's not. I hope it's a precautionary thing, but if she's not in the best of shape, Anna Hall might do something. And I see All in the Game have something here. We'll be upset by this. Was looking forward to a Nafi Anna Hall. Yeah, I was looking forward to it because I think this would be, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think Jackie Joyner Kersey record could have gone this year. And that's an old record as well. And that would be spectacular. Because sometimes you don't find that level together, but we'll see. Super chat right here. Really, thank you, Dean the Dream, for giving me a super chat. Super chats are available on the channel. I appreciate you. Thanks for that stuff. What else? I missed a couple comments. Let me get on those. She's too focused on modeling. She doesn't have time for track. I don't know. I mean, it could be, But certainly her performances this season suggest that she's still in high level shape in the 15 and the 4. So let's see what happens there, right? What Sandra said, no one knows the full reason why this decision was made for a thing. I wish, yeah, I don't know, right? And I hope I mean, the way in which the article, when I read the article of the LA Times, it suggested that they're still thinking about it, right? So they'll train, they have another, what is it, a week, I suspect. World Championship starts on the 19th. You probably want to get there by, a few days before or more. So she got to get on the plane next week, I would suspect. And we'll know by next week if this is happening. But it would be sad if she's not there. But we wish her the very best, and hopefully, either way, I think it's going to be a fantastic 800 meters. You let me know. If she's not there, I'm definitely saying it's going to be a really big tussle between Mora and Keely Hodgson. So we'll see. Yeah. There might be a medal place up for grabs. Yeah. Thanks so much, Dean the Dream. All right. So that's it. I want to stay in that region, Belgium. Let's move over to the Netherlands quickly. And I want to talk about, smash that like button. Thank you everyone for joining me, and I really appreciate you on this live and for sticking around, and put your comments in, questions, we'll talk about them. I want to talk about with an athlete that I really like, have a lot of time for, but I'm a little bit concerned about the decision that they've made. And so I want to go to the great Sifan Hassan. And Sifan Hassan, based on what the Netherlands submitted for their team to the World Championships, they have her in the 1500, the 5000, and the 10,000 meters. And I don't know about that. She tried that stuff in Tokyo, probably could have won all three if she didn't tussle. She had that fall, still medal in all events. And now they're saying that she is going to run all three events. I don't know if that's the right time to do this. You let me know. Should this be happening? And I put it in the context, not that Sifan doesn't have the ability to compete over all of these events. She's definitely talented. She ran a spectacular London Marathon this year. So the endurance is there for sure. We see she has a good kick. The problem is she's how much? It's like 2 years, 3 years older. Is it? She's not at that level still. And then we now have to think about Faith Kipyegon, Gidi, names are slipping me. All of these elite athletes are out there. I don't know about this. I think they probably just list her there because she can run it and she can decide. And thank you everybody for joining me. Thanks over Supreme for coming in. Yeah, I appreciate everybody on the channel. Give me a like and subscribe if you like what's going on. Yeah, I think Faith is out there right now. It's outrageous what's going on there with Faith Kipyegon. So you can beat her. I don't think anybody can beat her here. So I don't know if Sifan trying to run all three events, she may get run out of medaling in any of them if she tries to do this. I don't know. Look at the schedule. That means she has to start, and I think I wrote it down just for memory here. Where is it? If she runs the 1500, the 5000, and the 10,000 meters, they're going to pick her up off her stretcher. I think that's what's going to happen, because she has to run in the 1500 meter heats on day one, and then the 10,000 meter final is the same evening. That's a lot of work. Day two, she has the semifinals of the 1500 meters. Then there's like a break on day three. Then she has the final on day four. And then day five is the heats of the 5000. A couple days for recovery. and then you have the final of the 5,000 meters on day 8. Shouldn't do this. She should not run the 1,500 meters. I absolutely think you should avoid that. So, and I like Sifan Hassan. In fact, they still need to call me back. Her agent talked to me, but he said when she was less busy, they would make her give me a talk, but I haven't followed up. Let's see what's going. Yeah, all in the game. She should only. Yeah, I agree with that. That's what I'm saying. She should only do that. But we'll see. What else have I missed? What about athletes that did not make the qualifying but very close? No, I think they can't run if they don't make those marks unless they are in an event where they're ranking at some level and they bring them in. And I don't know what's going on. If you just don't, if you don't make it, you don't make it. So I think that's what happened like in the men's 400 meters for Jamaica. The guy that finished third, he didn't have the qualifying standard, so they go to the guy in 6th place. All right. Yeah. Cool. So I don't like the Sifan Hassan thing, and let's hope that she sticks to the 5,000, 10,000. I just don't think you have the kick to handle or the speed. I could be proven wrong. Or if she's going to run the 1,500, then run 15 and 5. Don't, you got to give up one of those. The schedule is too grueling for that. And she's not as young as she used to be. I'm not there to tell them what to do, but I'm skeptical about that. All right. I want to touch on some other interesting things that's happening in the sport, and thank you everybody for being with me so long. As we're getting up to an hour. I can't believe time is moving like that. I want to go to the dark side of the sport a little bit because we have to talk about this, and I want to talk a little bit about what's happening when it comes to violations, some doping violations. I won't go through all of them. I think on my slide, I think we have a recent listing of all of the most recent events that the athlete integrity unit put out in terms of who been served notice and the status of where people are. But I want to talk about one particular violation that gave me a little pause, and that's Chemostu from Uganda, right? Janet. And we know she's 24 years of age. She moved from what was it, 4 minutes 14 to 4 minutes 01 or something like that in the 1,500 meter, and she's been suspended. And normally this would, unless you're deep in the sport, you would be like, who's that? But the thing that really made me pause a little bit, and I don't want to get in trouble for any of these things, but I don't think I'm getting in trouble. But when you train with a high-profile training group and a high-profile coach like Adi Ruta, and you train with the world record holder in the 10,000 meters for men, Joshua Cheptegei, is it 10,000 meters? Yeah. We look. When that kind of stuff comes up, people start to look. So I hope that it's just a one-off and it's not something that is connected to the camp. You hope. But I suspect there will be some increased scrutiny, if not already increased scrutiny since the revelation of the violation. So we'll see. There's also the case of Gwendolyn Berry, the American hammer thrower who is banned for 16 months for testing positive. And this is also interesting to say the least because she tested positive for prescription drugs, but she didn't get an exception. She didn't get a TEU. She didn't get a therapeutic exemption, which I really don't know why that's the case. So she had this topical medication that was in a tube, and it's apparently prescription, and she didn't get an exemption. And this is something that, if you remember, if you go back to 2016, she was also suspended for 3 months for using an inhaler with also a banned substance as well. And so the way this happens now, she'll miss the World Championships and she'll also miss the Paris Olympics in 2024. And so, is this carelessness? Like, why? Why are you doing things that you can get an exemption for, and you're making these mistakes? It's like, is it similar to whereabouts violation here? Like, athletes are just not thinking straight? I don't know. Or the teams aren't thinking straight? Or is there something else to think about? Yeah, we'll see. All right. So those are two that I wanted to touch on, but I want to go to a case that earlier this year I wanted to do a video on it. I didn't get a chance to do a video on it, and I got stalled, but it just came up in the news. And before I get to there, yeah, exactly. How does a 34-year-old veteran don't know this, right? Exactly my point. This is why when I see some of these things, I pause, because I say to myself, you should know better. You're not like a 17-year-old athlete or an 18-year-old athlete, right? You're not young in the business. And you've already had a problem before. So if you get another one, you're going to get some time off. So who knows? It could be, if that's it, then that's a bad thing there. That's a bad thing. But I want to switch and talk about the Peter Boyle case, the Australian 800-meter runner, the guy who came fourth at the Tokyo Olympics, that initially tested positive for EPO. So when you test positive for EPO, it's considered blood doping. As we know, EPO is a natural substance that occurs in the body. And what they do in the EPO tests, which is also controversial in some parts of the circles, in the medical circles, they look to see if there's presence of what you would consider as synthetic EPO. So Boyle's case is interesting in the sense that he said all along that he didn't take anything. He was a clean athlete. But the way in which we learned about this earlier was somewhat kind of interesting kind of structure, right? So he tested, one of his samples came back positive for EPO. And obviously, as an athlete, you're allowed to get the B sample tested and so on. So Sports Integrity Australia handles the thing. The lab that they're using is a WADA approved lab. It's the only one they have. It's the top of the top lab. And at some point, we get notification that he failed a test, but we shouldn't have known. It should have been like, if the B sample came back and nothing was there, we just wouldn't know. Because, stuff happens. And the fact that was leaked, so there's all that controversy, if you remember this. But the thing about the whole Peter Boyle thing that was interesting to me is that they had at the time some independent laboratories in Canada and Norway that looked at the sample, and they were saying that the people were misreading naturally occurring EPO for synthetic. So that's part of the issue too. I think the guys in Sports Integrity Australia are calling nonsense on that. They don't think they make any issues with the whole testing thing. They think they're above board. They know what they're doing, and so on. So he gets clear this week. He puts out a statement. He says, and I don't know if we have the statement up, but he says, I've been exonerated. It was a false positive, like I said all along. And he's calling, they've put this to bed. Obviously he's going to be tainted a little bit, because we should never really known about it if it was a problem. But the thing that was interesting at the first time of the thing is what one came positive, and the next test, when it came back, returned an atypical response. That was what the B sample did. Not a negative at the time. Eventually they said it's negative, like recently. And that makes me think that they weren't reading the test properly. They weren't reading the markers properly. That means that's a faulty issue on the part of the lab in Australia, which is the highest lab they have. It's the most sophisticated labs that you'll find. So that was a problem there. And so I wonder how many other people could get into problems for this. I just really don't know. Uh, and so, as you know, blood doping and EPO is it's like if you take if you ingest it, it's like it's a form of blood doping. Works with the oxygen stuff, the recovery, all of that kind of stuff. And it sounds that it turns out that he didn't do anything wrong based on this. Now, if I'm Peter, I'm gonna be a little bit upset because there's this whole thing around me that maybe I took something and we didn't and we didn't and I didn't, so I might lose sponsorship, people might doubt me and so on. So I think the whole situation is one that I really think there needs to be a review of the EPO testing procedures that we have. And there may be a reconsideration needed for how athletes that are accused of doing that, how we treat them. That might be an interesting thing, but I don't know where we'll see that. Yeah. Well, last time I talked about Toby Irwin, I don't know. The last time I heard that the case should have the case currently is in front of the I think it's in front of let me see where it is. It's referred to the disciplinary tribunal. Yeah, that's the technical term. I believe they're supposed to make a decision on this before the World Championships, but I'm not quite sure exactly when the case is supposed to be up. I need to get Deja on the line. He knows this thing. I think he told me the date, but I don't remember exactly. But I believe she's getting a hearing that would allow her to clear her name if she has a strong case for why she had that whereabouts violation. But I don't know exactly when. It should have been now or soon, right? I really don't know. Yeah. So we'll see. Exactly. His reputation is damaged. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I know other people did a video on it for sure. I was gonna do something interesting because when it came out initially earlier this year, I was fascinated by it. But I also wanted, yeah, I know Total Running Productions, yeah. I also wanted to get a deeper sense of the testing mechanism, and I started to talk to some medical professionals, but I didn't get to talk to some people who do research on EPO. I just never got around to doing it. Some professors that I know, and because it's kind of an interesting test. It's not the same kind of test like an anabolic steroid or something like that. They have to kind of you have to know how to read it. It's just an interesting kind of thing. So yeah, I think it put some stain on the kid's reputation, especially if he didn't take anything, right? So we'll see. I don't know what will happen to Toby, to be honest with you, as I was saying, just to finish that point. We'll see. I don't know. World Championships is coming up, so they need to make this decision relatively soon, I suspect. And I'll find out to see when exactly that might be occurring. All right. Yeah. So those are the doping stuff I wanted to talk about. If there's anything else you guys want to talk about, you're fine to do it. There's a couple other things that happened yesterday. I don't know how much of the Ed Murphy Classic you guys watched. I tried to follow it. I watched most of the races. I saw a couple of things that made me think. And I remember last week when we had a conversation about the men's 400 meters. All in the game, I talked about Karani James and his he's going through some traumatic period. He lost his coach and so on. And he was in that 400 meters last week, not last week, yesterday, that was won by the Jamaican Antonio Watson, which is a kid that I like a lot. I think he has a lot of promise. Hopefully my next year, he should be approaching 44 lows and maybe going to sub 44. And so Watson beats Karani. Karani runs a 44.92, and when you see a 44.9 from a guy like James, you know that he's just not in the kind of headspace and shape that would allow for for him to be competitive. So I've seen enough now to suggest that I don't think he would factor the World Championships, and I think it will still be an easy ride for. Easy is a strong word, but I think Gardner will win quite comfortably. I'm looking forward to see what Wade can do. You know, Wade might be back now, and hopefully he can get below 4 seconds as well. But yeah, I think James is out of it for sure. Yeah. There's also the 100 meters that gave me, I was intrigued to watch as well. I don't know how many of you caught it. There's Marvin Bracey there winning, Oblique Seville coming second, still that close to that 10-second mark. I thought this year Oblique would have been much closer to where Zarnell Hughes is. This is what was coming out of the camp. One of my journalist contacts was saying that when they looked at where Zarnell was, they thought Oblique was in better shape. So clearly he's had some setbacks. And I'm still hoping that Oblique can do something and find his way near the podium or on the podium for the World Championships, because this has been a hard one for me to call as well in terms of who will win the 100 meters at the World Championships. This is like, I have no idea. I have to be honest with you. Like, I was thinking about it even last night, I was thinking about it. I'm like, the only reason why I say Fred is because I'm giving him the respect of, medaling in Tokyo, winning the title last year, has the know-how. But then I looked at him in the 200 meters at the US trials and I was like, I don't know. I'm not seeing anything special. Nobody's doing anything special that made me think that, yeah, you're out and out going to win this. But I know he's a big game performer. But is it time that Zarnell Hughes wins it? Right? Can he do it? Like, he's the fastest man in the world. But everybody's hovering around a 9-8 shape there, which is okay. What about Ferdinand Omanyala? We often talk about, can Ferdinand deliver outside of Kenya? Last year you give him a big pass because he gets to the World Championships a few hours before he has to compete. But he likes to race a lot. He raced too many races for me this year. But he has a good chance of getting on the medal podium. What about the other Americans? I don't know. Can that Jamaican kid spring a surprise? It's wide open for me. I can't call it. I just can't call it. I don't know what I'm going to say in my preview. I just can't call it. But we'll see. I mean, there's a few comments here. Yeah, hopefully she gets cleared. But I mean, if she doesn't get cleared, then I think it's really high level of ineptitude for the world record holder, the world champion, to not have the proper structures in place to update your Adams form. I just find it very hard to believe. On Karani, yes, first week was 10 weeks ago, and the is that I'm surprised he's back, and I feel it for him, and I'm happy to see him. I suspect he might go to the World Championships and try and do something. He's a big time performer, but it can't be easy. Wide open, Zarnell is good bet. I think he's looking good. Yeah, I saw those as well. I like what I see from Zarnell this year, that level of maturity. I was surprised. Breaking also he has both records now for the UK, right? Was it John Regis record he has? And the 200 made me look at him and say, look, he's in good shape. I think if he focuses, he should be on the tail. I think a minimum for Zarnell Hughes is getting a medal this time. He has the medal. I'm hoping Oblique can do something. I think Jamaicans are getting in a point where we're getting a couple of athletes in and around. Obviously, Oblique has the most experience. He went to the Olympic semifinal last year, finished fourth. We all thought that if he continued, he would, be moving his way up the podium. It's wide open. You never know if he comes into the championships looking good. He ran a 9.98 yesterday. That still doesn't really get you anywhere close to a podium. At least I don't think. So let's see what happens. But he understands how to run rounds, so we'll see what happens there. Sandra says this the second Jamaican that beat him. Sean Bailey was the first. Yeah, Oblique was injured, and I think yes, yeah, I agree. I mean, I hope Oblique can get there because I think he's a wonderful talent as well. Uh, I'm s- I'm a little bit upset, not upset, but I'm disappointed that Akeem Blake, who is the fastest, is he the fastest Jamaican this year? He's not. He doesn't have a spot on the team as well because so I think Jamaica should do well in the relay. I think it's time. I think if they could do a little practice, a proper practice there, they could try and win the medal. Who knows? They could win it all. That might be pushing it, but they could. So we'll see. Yeah, it would be great to see Amaniala win for the Pride of Africa. Yeah, I mean the Africans have not medal at this stage. Yeah, they haven't. He looks most likely to do it. I mean, Simbini looked okay earlier this year as well. So we'll see. We'll definitely see. This is right. He hasn't run quicker than 992 at sea level. So we've always talked about this all in the game, and it's not only us. A lot of people are often skeptical of his ability to perform at this level. Can he run the rounds? He's the kind of guy that likes to run hard. We'll see. We'll definitely see. Yeah, yeah. Oval is agreeing with you as well. Yeah. No, I agree with you. They got three guys. Who is it? Reese Prescott. What's the other guy? Yeah. So they can they should be up there. And I think one of the interesting things is like if Zarnell were to win the 100 meters or medal in the 100 meters, those boys would be chuffed. They would be saying, "Look, we're gonna go for it. We have to go for it and see what's going on." Yeah. Speaking of Let's See Boga as well, I mean, even him, I believe, has a chance of of potentially medaling as well in the 100 meters. He's in fantastic shape. He's a little bit rugged for me. Doesn't transition is not always great, but I think he has tons of upside. I like that kid a lot, much so. Is that young kid that run the 9.8, that junior kid? Is he going to the World Championships? Is he Suriname? He's from Suriname, right? Yeah. Is he going? Yeah. Yeah. See, as soon as I said that, you're saying the same. I don't know. Is he going? I actually have no idea about this. I should have checked. Yeah. But I mean, he's beaten a lot of the big guys this year. I don't see any reason why not. But running rounds. He ran a lot of races this year. He just ran in those championships the other day. Was it the South American Championships or whatever? So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and then yeah, we have yeah Dadzi as well. Yeah, true. There's a bunch of guys in the 9.9s, low 9.8 highs. It's open. It's open, and I certainly think that's not bad for the sport. There's also that U.S. What's the U.S. kid that won the national title as well? Christian Coleman is the guy that I don't know. I'm not convinced by, and I'm surprised he hasn't gotten back to the levels. This is what second major championship year, and he doesn't seem like he's getting anywhere close to be back to his best. He's like hovering in the 10 something. So I thought he would have been back to like at least 9.8s or so consistently. Certainly not there. He ran a whole full season. He got back some of that season after Tokyo, right? And then he got the whole season last year. You give him a pass there, and now this year, yeah, I don't know. So it's wide. It's wide open. We'll see what happens there. I'll do a preview next week. Obviously, we can talk about it. I was just like thinking even about the women's 100 meters. I'm just not sure. Not sure. But here's what I'll say. If you put a gun to my head, I will say Sharika Jackson will win it. And I think Fraser Price will come second. And third place, I'm not quite sure now. Because I would say Shakari for sure for the third place, but she pulled out of the London thing with a hamstring situation. I haven't seen any follow-ups. If you've seen any follow-ups, let me know. But it seemed as if they did it as a precautionary measure. However, how serious is that precautionary? And if it's something that's problematic, then obviously, if she's missed time in training, if it's bothering her, that could be hard, right? And if she didn't have any issues, then I would probably say she'd be on the podium for sure. But I hope she's recovered in time because you want everybody to be there. And so I think it's gonna be either Talu. I think Julian Alfred. Part of me feels like Julian Alfred will find a way on that medal podium. Just somehow, she got a little bit of rest after the World Championship, after the not the World Championships, after the Collegiate Championships. She came back. She beat Sha'Carri, I think, and then she also ran a decent race behind Sharika. So I think she's in good form as well. So let's see. I think she's a spectacular athlete, so she might be able to do something. So we'll see. Yeah. Oh, thanks for telling me that. Oh, so she's back. Okay. Well, if she's back and back on full, all guns blazing, then I think she'll be on the podium as well. She looks really good, unless the pressure takes you to some level. I just feel like I give Fraser Price a lot of grace because she's, as you know, I think she's the greatest 100-meter athlete ever, and consistency and all of that, even consistency towards the world record. She's run more 10.6 than anybody. I know, obviously, Elaine has run faster, but she's been there all the time. I think, if she's in the right shape, if she can get cycling a couple good races, she might be hard to beat. If she gets a bullet start, then it's going to be tough. So we'll see. For Sha'Carri, we'll see if she's back. How she manages the run. We'll see what's going on there. Lots more comments coming in. Sandra says Talu definitely third. I think Sha'Carri started to peak too many races. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's a good point. One of the things that I often say is that if you really run a lot of hard races early, it can catch up to you. Running hard is tough, but Fraser Price ran hard all season last year and no one caught her, right? So she ran what, 9:10.6 or 8:10.6. I don't know. I mean, and I think what Sharika's been doing the last couple of weeks was strategic. I think the gold medals go through her, no doubt. And we just seen Fraser Price over two races, so it's not enough for me to hang my hat out on, especially given what I know Sharika Jackson's capable of. So we'll see. Yeah, manage your rounds effectively. So you was talking more about the 4x1 goal regribbing. Yeah, I think they can win. Yeah, they can win. The Canadians are always in the mix. I don't know. Speaking of the Canadians, I saw DeGrasse running another 2019. He looks like he's coming back. You never. Well, last year I counted him out because he was just not in the kind of space. But DeGrasse is the kind of guy that will show up at the World Championships and surprise you. So we'll see. Yeah, we shall see. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to a lot of stuff. There's also some other interesting stuff yesterday. That kid, the 13-year-old kid that run 49.11, Newton, I think his name is, and then Sims, the other kid that I think he's 16 and he run a 45.12. A lot of interesting stuff happening in track and field. And I think probably the biggest track and field story of the week that transcended just pure track fans was the situation with the Somalian runner at the World University Games, right? Abukar Ali. I don't know if you guys saw that race. She ran a 21.81 over 100 meters. That blew up, into I saw it on the Today Show. I saw it in all sort of outlets that never really cover track and field, and it was a big kind of a controversy. There was some level of, I suppose, people thought that was a national disgrace. Turned out the chairwoman of the Somali Athletics Federation, she has been suspended. She was connected to the athlete. There was issues about nepotism and so on. And yeah, okay, this makes the news. She certainly doesn't look like a 100-meter athlete for sure. But you wish that other things would make the news for track and field and not necessarily stuff like this, right? Yeah. And so she gets into the World University Games, which, okay, it's not a high profile meet as we might think it is. It is high profile, but usually athletes that go to World University Games are tend to be world class. I mean, I don't even know what to say about that 21.8. It's the ugliest running I've ever seen in my life, right? But yeah, so it led to people being fired, I guess, or suspended or something of the sort. And that has to be the biggest track and field news for the year and for the season, right? For this week. And it's all because not of great performances, but maybe lack of that, So we'll see. But I really appreciate all of you guys. Thank you so much for joining me and for hanging out for another hour and change. I hope that you stick around and watch other things on the channel. And I'll be back next week, and I hope to do a preview and come ready to tell me that I'm wrong. Obviously we preview, we make our predictions, and we'll see. The World Championships is coming up. I'm gonna do hopefully get some lives going during the World Championships, especially on the weekend. I'm back to work in a couple of weeks. Gotta teach students. But anyway, I will be following all of this stuff, and I'm excited to see what happens. I wanted to be at the World Championships, but I couldn't make it because of other reasons. But we'll see. Yeah. So thanks for joining me. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell as well if you haven't done so. It will tell you when I come live, when I post new videos, and you have a good rest of your evening. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye.